So after I finished my mapping video the other day, I got into a discussion with one of my commenters about different sources for maps, and I went back and thought about compiling some different sources that I might make into a follow-up video. And lo and behold, as I was going to one of my favorite information sources for medieval archaeological data, and just raw information from a journal, I found a good source with a map in it, and then I went to check the aerial imagery and found that the medieval village location was easily identifiable. And I thought I'd make a real quick follow-up video just to show you how to get that done. So this is the resource that I was thinking of. It's the Archaeology Data Service, and you can see that the website is archaeologydataservice.ac.uk. I'll put the link in the description for the video just to make it easier for you to find. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Search Data, and we'll scroll down to the library. And in this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and we'll go into Browse by Series. As you can tell, there is a plethora of resources in here. You just go in by the series count, 41 different types of resources. We're going to look into for medieval, and specifically we're going to go for the Journal of Medieval Archaeology, although you can see there's some other like Journal of Medieval History and whatnot that are actually also really good sources. And in this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and sort back by year. I've already done some looking through because I was looking through the older issues just to see what might be available. One of the first things I found in volume number one was an article about the Saxon house. So if you ever wondered, how the Saxon houses were built, how they were arranged inside, um, here's a little plan diagram of where they excavated some longhouses of Saxon origin, but then you also get like artist rendering of what those houses would have looked like in the period. This is probably the more useful thing for developing your own kind of fantasy villages and that sort of thing. Now, another useful article I found, this was in volume three, so this is going to be 1959, is the Six New Towns of the Bishops of Winchester from 1200 to 1255. And of course, it give you an idea of what the Bishop of Winchester's lands looked like around 1224. Now, one of the things that I'll show you here real fast, just to give you a warning, even something as old as 1959, you still include some images where the rights were never granted for them to use the image electronically, so you won't necessarily have that. In this particular case, there's a map under there that might be useful or not, depending on what your particular project was. But you can probably go out somewhere else and find that map or something similar that you can use. But what I will tell you about this article that's really kind of cool, I want to give you an idea of where the new towns were added at this period, but the appendices of this article are what is really great because it gives you information about all the lands under the control of the Bishop of Winchester in 1224, and just in general, what was going on in the medieval boroughs of central southern England at the time. But then Appendix 3 is really the brilliant thing because it goes settlement by settlement and gives you an assessed lay wealth in shillings, taxpayers, what they paid, the poll taxes, or that were paid poll taxes in those years. And then Appendix 4 is just genius in terms of for these particular years 1264, 1265, 1274, 1275, 1375, 1376. It gives you a total taken in for the year in the bishop's new towns in pounds, shilling, and pence of the net rents that were taken, the profits of justice, in other words, fines that were levied against people living in the area, and then also what they made in markets, fairs, stalls, etc., as far as what was the bishop's cut off of everybody's sales, or what they would pay in booth rent, that kind of thing. So that's a fantastic resource just for the economics of the time period. And so then the last article we want to talk about is this deserted medieval village of Riseholme that's near Lincoln in Lincolnshire, England. And go through that. You kind of it gives you a little map to show you general vicinity of where that is. But it also has a map of this what was an abandoned medieval village. It was abandoned by the early 1600s. But actually it had been in decline since probably the 12 to 1300s. By 1402, I think it was, or something like that. You'll have to read the article to find out the exact date. Most of the lands were given over to one of two monasteries, and for the purpose of turning it into a sheep pasturage for the benefit of the monasteries. So by that point in time, the village was really gone. Um, but we still have this map of the archaeological work that was done there, and some more information about the village and historical records that regard the village, and then some talk about what actually happened during the excavation, what they found as far as within the ground, what the stratigraphy showed. One of the things they discovered is a feature. A feature is a thing that something of human origin that can't be moved. An artifact is something you can pick up and take with you. It was this well, which is marked on the map, but here's a plan view or a profile view. A plan view of the top of the well where it's round, halfway down where it kind of squares off, and then a profile view of the whole thing. And then, you see buckles. These are all objects then that were excavated at the site, so we can get into a lot about poetry. So this article isn't going to tell you everything that happened at that village. You probably have to turn to another source like, a history of Lincolnshire and what was going on in different hamlets all over the place. And maybe you have to compile a sort of aggregated or amalgamated understanding of what a village looked like in Lincolnshire in the 1200s, we'll say. But this will get you pointed in the right direction. So then what we want to do though really is the next part is taking that map that we saw at the beginning of the article and then looking to see where that is. So here I'm just going in and regular Google Maps, just go into your browser and look for Rhizome and Lincoln, just north of Lincoln. You can see it marked here, and we'll zoom in on that area. And you can see that the marker is actually showing us what is the current town of Rhizome. And there's a college over here that I think is related to the University of Lincoln. But what I noticed when I looked here was, we'll show that map when we get into the GIS of it. But I noticed that the actual medieval town, you can see here, small buildings here. You can see the outline of buildings all the way along here. This building was useful to me. This building outline was useful to me. You can kind of see this edge road curving around. This is Rhizome Lake. So I realized right off the bat, I was like, oh, well, there's the medieval village right next door to the current village. Let's then bring that into our GIS. And I've actually brought it in and rescaled it already. And since I went through this, the process or most of the process, or different features that were available, I didn't want to get too far into it with this little add-on. But by and large, scaled it. Rotated around. So I'm fiddling around with turning it on and off, or affecting the opacity, turning the transparency up, or I can take it back down. I think we can go. So then I matched up, this little building shown on the map with this little area here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. That's just one I added in so I can play around with it on camera. Here's the one I've already georeferenced in. It just took me a couple of minutes to do it, but I, just like I did in the main video, my last video, I had to play with the edges, play with the scaling. Sometimes I was doing a uniform scaling. Sometimes I was pulling it out a little bit at one edge or the other. But I finally got it all to, as you can kind of see, here's the, here's the outline of the map then. And then here's what it would look like. You can see we take the transparency off. You're marked as far as houses and whatnot. And we go over here and show. So that well that I showed you in the article where they had the two plan views and the profile view of it, there it is where it's marked on the map. And then, of course, the other thing that we can do is, because I've already imported raster data, a digital elevation model, just like I did in the previous video. We've got this all marked off. And so what we can do then is get ourselves a new three-dimensional view. Bring that up. And of course, we'll configure it. And because this is more flat than it was, one of the things I talked about in the previous video was when we get a DEM under there, we have the option then to choose a different vertical exaggeration in this vertical scale. In the previous video, what I did, I left it at 1:1 because it was a hill in the middle of a flat plain, so it was already obvious enough. This time, because it's a little flatter around this lake, I'm going to go ahead and pop the vertical scale up to 3 times its vertical exaggeration, and you'll see why when we put this out here. So you can kind of tell that there is much less vertical exaggeration, but you can still see where this is the main road and then there's a higher ground above it. So even where the well is sort of up on the higher ground, and then this side of the road was on lower ground just by the lake. So if we wanted to just take another look at that, um, what we could do would be we could turn this map off and then just look at it with the aerial imagery. And then just as a last idea, what you can do is go back to Google Maps in our internet browser, and we can scoot in there, do the 3D thing, and get a side view of it, or we can zoom all the way in and actually take a look at that area today. So this is right out in front of us, essentially the road into the abandoned medieval village of Rysholm. And of course, if we wanted to, we could, go down this road and look at it from some different vantage points. Anyway, that was it. That's just a real short follow-up from my previous video. I wanted to show you what was going on with that. And I thank you for watching this video, and I hope you'll come back and watch the next one too. Thank you very much.